Day 2, version 4.0. You don't have to hashtag that, but you can, by the way, 4.0, because it's the 4th annual. I thought of that. You can laugh if you want. It's okay. Yeah, it's the 4th. 4th annual. Yes. So are there any Nerds fans here?
Yeah.
What about moonlighting? Yeah. Come on. That's what I'm here for. Okay. What?
You named so many things.
I know, you really could.
Risky business.
Yeah, well, we're going to get all into that. Robert Carradine, Brian Tochi, Curtis Armstrong. See, I knew I'd do it wrong. Curtis, is there a Curtis in the building? Yeah, there we go. This is what you've been waiting for. This is Brian Buxton. He's going to be one of your hosts. Channel 14, Cinema Chat. You guys are familiar with that, right? Yeah, row, you know. All right, so we're just going to, wherever you guys want to sit, be comfortable.
I just wanted to say, is this working? Hello.
It's just the.
Oh, just a blue. Oh, hello. I just wanted to say it's Brian Tochi. Tochi. I just.
That's why I'm hosting your panel.
Oh, I know, right?
I just know you as a Ninja Turtle, so.
Oh.
That's
Mr. Armstrong, thank you.
Thank you.
No, hello, Mr. Carradine.
Hello, Mr. Tochi.
We're going to be.
Whatever your name is.
You're right. Hi, everybody.
Yes, we're gonna be tag. We got 2 guys on the HN tag teaming this. It takes a lot of input and strength to take care of you guys. You know, you guys are amazing to be here. We're very thankful that you're here. So
Thank you.
Brian, do you want to?
Need a beverage?
Some water would be good. Yes, yes, please.
Oh, water. Yeah.
He's going to ask for a
What about
martini.
water?
You're right.
That'd be better. I'm just kidding. I will get water.
Wunderbar.
Very.
So, Brian, you helped sponsor this. The News for You, for our local entertainment magazine.
Yeah, I did. And I was kind of telling you earlier, I said, I mean, these guys, like meeting these guys, and I know, a lot of people say this, but I mean, I grew up, I was young in '84, but I grew up with Revenge of the Nerds and just a lot of the stuff that these guys were in. I've got a special question for you, but I mean, I remember my mother watching Fantasy Island. And so you know what I'm going to ask about, but Better Off Dead, Risky Business. I mean, all kind of stuff that these guys were in that were so, crazy. And I was like, I just want to sponsor these guys just to meet them and hang out with them. I was like, so I mean, I've been a fan for a long time.
I would really challenge all of you to look at their careers and their filmographies. It's amazing between the 3 of you. You're just like, you represent the working Hollywood and doing everything and touching almost every genre and thing. And I like how you all 3 kind of had different ways into the business, very distinct, interesting ways. But we can go into that. But I know Brian, he's here for the nerd stuff. I'm old enough to remember seeing a little Brian on Star Trek, and that. So, and I can't believe he's done Partridge Family and the Brady Bunch. That's amazing. But anyway, and Risky Business, I've always called that the Citizen Kane of teenage romance movies.
That's very good.
Yeah, it was a review I did. I quoted that. I trademarked that. No. And then Robert here, it's just, he represents just so much of his family, and David and Keith and your father. I just, I have a lot of your father's movies in my library. So, and yours too. So, so I have all kind of more offbeat, weird questions but I know you guys have a lot of questions, but Brian, take it over, because I know you did your homework on the nerd stuff, so I know you got questions.
Yeah, it's just, there's a lot of randomness to it, but it's just interesting things that I learned about everybody, or just questions that I wanted to ask. And so just to start with the Revenge of the Nerds. So you guys, this film was done in like 8 weeks. Is that correct? Or was it longer? Because I know that you guys took over.
No, I think 8 weeks is accurate.
Okay.
I thought it felt longer, but maybe it was just 8
it
weeks.
felt like
A lot longer.
Yeah.
I thought it was like 11 weeks or something, but I don't know.
Well, maybe you guys were at
that sounds right. 11 weeks.
University of Arizona.
Because you guys were there.
So, yeah.
You were
We
there.
showed up a couple of weeks early.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, it's interesting. When studios do a film, they ordinarily, especially on location, they ordinarily would not hire the actors to come in and rehearse for 3 weeks, get to know each other.
Or in our,
on.
in our
2
case,
weeks.
party for 3 weeks.
Yeah, it's true. But for Revenge of the Nerds, maybe that's why it seemed a little longer. They brought the key actors in 3 weeks prior to principal photography. So we had the opportunity to get to know one another, to party with one another, to rehearse with one another. And so maybe that's why it seemed a little longer.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, and that's what I was going to ask, because there's notorious, or infamous stories about Caddyshack and everything that went on there. So
I was nowhere near Caddyshack.
Well, no,
You can't blame us for that.
but you guys actually hung out, and a lot of the extras were University of Arizona students, and you guys actually hung out with them and like partied on campus and everything else.
Well, also, there is a scene in the film when we set up video cameras in the sorority house. And,
Betty.
well, there was Betty, yes. But there was also a girl in there that, she fulfilled her obligation. And she turned out to be the projectionist's daughter. So the next day when
But we
went,
didn't think the projectionist knew that. So
yeah, he was unaware until he saw the dailies the next day, and there's his daughter in her birthday suit. He left in a huff.
Now, I've read the budget was $7.5 million for the film. Was that a lot in 1984, or was that like really low budget and you guys had to?
No, that was lower end, but it wasn't low budget. I mean, they fed us, and we had places to change our clothes.
Let's see.
And all this time I thought it was $9 million. But back in the
Well, the
80s,
internet is.
yeah. Back in the 80s, though, $9 million is more like what, $25, $30 million?
I was so naive about that stuff because this was my second movie, and I didn't know anything about budgets or anything. I just knew I got a job doing a movie, and it was a 20th Century Fox movie. So it wasn't, a low budget independent movie. It was the 20th Century Fox. And I thought, boy, this is amazing, because that was all I thought, though. It never occurred to me until years later that there were budgets and that maybe it was low. But
Yeah, I think it was on the lower end, but I wouldn't call it low.
yeah,
Because back then, a big budget was 15.
right.
And today the big budget's 150. So
Right.
it's
Well, they
definitely-
weren't paying the actors that much. So,
Well, no, I got paid pretty good.
well, you did. But
Did you
But-
guys do you get residuals still? I mean, did you negotiate that kind of thing into your contract?
Well,
then, or-
the residuals are controlled by our union, the Screen Actors Guild, and every now and then I'll get one for 0 cents.
well, not for nerds. Though.
Oh, that was for Disney.
That was for Disney.
Yeah, my other favorite studio.
Yeah.
I have a question. When you saw the script and you're all starting to kind of get going on it, well, what did you think? Oh, this is just another job. This is going to be a little comedy. It may not do that big a deal. Did you have any inkling what this would turn into? Or when did you, or was it after the fact? And when did you think, wow, this is turning into something?
Probably, I think the opening salvo was when these guys all looked at the first day's rushes. And the first day of shooting was in the station wagon with Jamie Cromwell, the actor that played my father, and Anthony Edwards, he played my best friend. And it was the first time anybody had seen any of us do our thing. And I was afraid to see the dailies, so I wouldn't go in there. And these guys came out and they said, "Oh, we get it. You're doing it for real."
Well,
Well, I have to add to that because this was a script. It was not a really good script. it was not a script that anyone was really enthusiastic about doing, including the director, because Revenge of the Nerds sounded like a kind of, really? Are we going to do this? And Bobby, it took him a while to come around to the idea of playing, an iconic nerd. And so we were going into the thing not really excited. And it was only over a period of time as we started working on it, we got to know each other, and we started improvising with the director who encouraged that. That the whole, it started to feel right. But I don't know if I've ever had a feeling about a movie that I've done that this is going to be huge, and then it's huge. It doesn't happen that way.
But I also
Not for me, anyway.
I got to throw in, when Jeff Canoe, our director, got hired, he was meeting with Joe Wazan, the head of 20th Century Fox, and he's being all earnest and everything about this movie. And Joe Wazan is shaking his head. He's going, no, you're not getting it. And finally it got to the point where Jeff Canoe, the director, said, so basically you want me to make a movie that I want to take my name off of. He said, you got it.
But that brings up an interesting point too, because I know that Curtis especially was not super, because of your background and your professional training, you were not super excited about the movie, but you and Robert ended up being in all four of them.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't enthusiastic about it, but I also, when I read the script, Booger is hardly in the script, in that original script. He, the belching contest was in there and one or two other things. So it wasn't like I was going, oh, what a great part. I'd come off of Risky Business, which had a really great part, and it was a great script and all that, and now I'm, belching and being really obnoxious, and I just, it put me off,
So it sounds like you guys had to. Did you guys all individually work on your scripts and really, or was the director or somebody in the audience?
Yes,
So and that's very important. But anyway, did you guys? Did you just start like, okay, we're going to really work on the script and do?
It's kind of
The story of the thrush.
yeah. What's kind of interesting is that like I said earlier, we had 3 weeks to get to know each other, which is very unusual for a studio to bring actors together before principal photography, where you can interact and get to know one another. But the first day of shooting, where Robert and Tony and Jamie are in the car and everything else, we were in the, if you remember, we're trying to get picked to be in the fraternities in the gym. And so there's all these cots kind of there, and we're all just kind of passing the time because it takes so long to do a film. And so Curtis and I were sitting on a cot, and we're playing chess, we're playing checkers, and then we had cards. And we're just kind of going back and forth, making ourselves laugh. We're playing poker and just doing stupid things. And then I'll let Curtis take it from there.
Well, Jeff came by. He was going to go shoot Bobby and Tony in the shower when they'd been covered with tar and feathers.
Tarred and feathered, yeah.
And he said, as he was walking past the cots where we were sitting, he said, "Come up with something. I'll be back." And because there was nothing. And this is what I mean. That was, for the secondary roles, there was very little in the script as it was. So the two of us are sitting there, and the prop guy gave us a chess, we had a chessboard and cards, and we came up with this deal where it was the two of us playing poker, and he says, I think I got a frush. And I
think I have a frush.
And I say, what the fuck is a frush? Excuse my language for the younger people here. And so we came back, they came back and said, what do you got? And we ran through that. And he went, great. And that was it. But then it became Brian and me. Every time we were in a scene together, we would have to come up with something.
Come up with something. Just,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, it wasn't so much on the spot as it had been. It just was sort of accepted.
And that continued on.
That-
But we actually worked. Then what happened was we actually worked out bits. So
Yeah.
the like 90% of when you see Curtis and I together, generally it was stuff that Curtis and I had worked out. That was never in the script, that we just kind of thought. And actually, with everybody, there became a time when everybody kind of realized that it was just not going as well as everyone had hoped. So everyone was then given the latitude to be able to kind of come up with their own things, and ultimately that's when things started cooking.
But the other part of that is, I mean, it sounds like we're saying if it weren't for us, but the truth
But if
is,
it wasn't for
well,
you,
yeah, yes, but the other part of it was we had script writers and a director and a producer who just gave us all of that leeway. If they had, if the screenwriters had said these are the words, period, and if the director says, I'm going to make a statement about something, it would have been a whole different situation. But they basically, when they realized we were enthusiastic about doing it, we were funny people, pretty much, and so they said, go with it. And that's why all of those scenes were able to work, because we had the support of Jeff Canoe and Peter Three
but
Day.
the main support that Curtis is talking about, that was from the creative end of the film. And because the budget was a lower budget for a studio production, we didn't have to deal with the studio at all. I mean, they didn't.
And we were in Tucson, Arizona.
Yeah, so they couldn't get to us, and
No suits.
yeah, so they left us alone.
But that's how I feel that it's so easy to say that the movie was cast so well because of the chemistry between you guys and just the natural acting and just being funny and working off of each other, that made the movie work so well and made it what it is, or what it was and what it is today.
What it is.
Yeah.
But that's a fluke. You can't cast chemistry. It either happens or it doesn't happen. And in our case, we were really lucky that we just all hit it off. 40 years later, we're still traveling around the country together. So
No, but I mean, honestly, which is so cool. It's so unusual to do a film, an ensemble film, and an ensemble film. Why?
Ben Savage, people.
And Tessa Savage.
Bye. Nothing else interesting is going to happen here.
Don't bother to
Okay,
say.
thank God he's gone.
Okay, now we can really
Now
talk.
we're going to talk about Ben for a while.
Yeah. No, and what's so interesting is that, when you do an ensemble film, a lot of times there's a lot of conflict, a lot of friction between the actors. And, for whatever reason, they want to get more in the scene. They want to be whatever. With us, we just hit it off right away. And to this day, I mean, we love each other. I mean, we're like a little family. And after all these years, I mean, really,
And also, that never happens.
It
with
never
films
happens.
Where you stay friendly for 40 years.
So were you supporting each other? It could have turned into a competition, nerd each other. But I guess it sounds like you guys really had a good chemistry, that you really were probably rooting for everybody and working as a group.
Well, whoever had a good idea, we would go with that idea.
Yeah.
And if a better idea came up, we'd go with that one. And every now and then we'd fight, but for the most part, it was okay.
And now, sorry. Well, I was going to say, speaking of the cast and the actors, this was for not for you, I don't think, but for you guys. I think this was one of your first films. I know it was your second and whatnot, but there was a lot of really great people in this film. And one of my favorites, and I you guys can applaud too, but Ogre is just Donald Gibb. I love you guys, but he was just like one of the most memorable characters in that, and he didn't really have a lot of lines. It was just his personality in the film. But like John Goodman, I mean, what was it like to work with so many people that have become, I mean, besides yourselves, that have become really very successful or very famous that weren't when you guys worked with them? I mean, was because John Goodman is such a,
Well, I gave John Goodman a lot of tips that helped him with his performance.
Actually, he was a lot of fun. We were talking about him at dinner last night, and John was a lot of fun to work with. Yeah, he really was.
So when did 20th Century Fox, the suits, did see the final product? Or how soon? And they thought, yeah, what was their reaction?
Well, it's funny you should ask, because we saw a rough cut of the film with temporary music, and the guy who's in charge of distributing 20th Century Fox movies was sitting right behind us. And then the lights came up at the end. He goes, "Piece of shit."
and the studio did not get behind the release, correct? I mean,
No, they released it, like they barely released it, and it just sold out everywhere it was released. And the studios that are in competition with Fox, they were calling the following Monday going, "Didn't you guys know what you had?"
Yeah. And did he not get fired? Did not the studio?
Yes, he did get fired.
Man, let's see. Oh, so Robert and Curtis, you guys, I don't know how old you were, Brian, because I didn't catch that anywhere, but you guys were 30 when you filmed this. So what was it like playing, somebody that was 10, 12 years younger? Because you guys looked so young in the movie, too. You did not look like...
No, we didn't. We didn't look old at all.
Well, you still don't. You still don't look old today. I mean, how old were you in the film?
It varies. My age varies back and forth.
Well, back then, though.
Yeah, but it's interesting. It might be interesting to find out how they got cast in the things, because these two have some interesting stories about being cast in their roles.
You go first, Curtis.
I've been told that I was auditioning for Tony Edwards' part. This is popping.
Yeah, they're kind of sporadic.
Really
Yeah.
Bad. Can you hear me? All right. So I've been asked to read for Tony Edwards' part, and I only knew that Robert Carradine was in this movie, and that was enough for me, because I've been a fan of Bobby's, as well as for a fan of his father. And I thought, oh, that would be so cool to be able to work with Bobby Carradine. Then I found out that Tony Edwards had been cast. Like, who's Tony Edwards? So I thought, okay, that's it. And then a while later, I got a call saying they did cast Tony Edwards, but they were thinking about you for another nerd. And I'm going, well, it's not Lamar, and it's not Takashi. I'm too old for Wormser. So I'm sort of figuring out it's either Poindexter or Booger. And so I said, okay, right off the bat, I wasn't crazy about this script anyway. If they offer me Poindexter, okay, I'll take it. They offer me Booger, forget it. I am not playing that part. I am a classically trained actor. I am not going to do belching scenes. So Poindexter, okay. Booger, no. And my agent said, okay. And he called up and he said, he talked to them, and then he called me back and he said, well, they offered you Booger. And I said, okay. I got it out of my system. And now I have to go to work because I haven't worked in a year.
No, what I find so amazing is Curtis actually is a classically trained actor. What lights in yonder window break, and yet Curtis is probably best known for, out of all the millions of things he's done, as Booger, which is kind of a cool thing, though, I think.
It's better than not being known at all.
Yeah.
And your casting, how did your...
Okay, so the script comes along, Revenge of the Nerds, and I look at the title, just the title, and I said, I am not going to be in a movie called Revenge of the Nerds. I'm not going to do it. I'm not a nerd. So the my agent says, well, why don't you go in and meet with the director and just go meet, okay? So I went in, I met the director. I had long hair. I rode in on my motorcycle, and we didn't hit it off. So I thought, okay, that's that. And then my agent called me back about a week later, and they said, they want you to come in and audition. I go, oh, okay. So I'm thinking, I'm going to show these people. So I went out and got a regular boy's haircut, and I went by an optometrist, and I got the glasses that I wound up wearing in the movie, the actual glasses. And I went and I sat in the outer office of the casting area, and the casting assistant comes out, looks right at me, looks the other way, goes back in, does it twice. And I'm thinking, what's going on here? I had a meeting for 2:00. I go, hey, I have a meeting. And she's like, oh my God, Bobby? So that's how that happened.
So I'm going to do just a really quick Internet Movie Database thing, and this is going to end up in a question. But Robert, you have worked with John Wayne. You worked with Jane Fonda, John Voight, and Scorsese.
And Lee Marvin.
Okay. And Brian, I mean, you know, Partridge Family, Brady Bunch, Police Academy. You were
Does
friends-
not quite stack up to John Wayne. Jane Fonda, John Wayne.
But you were friends with Yul Brynner also, and you even acted with Michael Douglas and David Carradine, and you obviously, you know, when in Risky Business, I mean Tom Cruise and all of this. Who is your favorite person to work with, or the most influential on your career? And I left somebody out with you.
I would say Lee Marvin.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
I mean, Jane Fonda and John Voight were incredible, but in terms of a total experience, being on a film with Lee Marvin for 10 weeks, playing an army man, was pretty spectacular.
Robert Lee. Yeah, and this is a film, The Big Red One, and Mark Hamill's in it, and and of course, you know, at the time, we all rushed because it was, it's Luke Skywalker in this film. But what you should know about this is you need to go out and find there's a different cut too. There's a longer cut.
It's called Reconstruction.
Right. And the director is a very famous person in Hollywood, Sam Fuller. Samuel, what would you call him? Sammy?
Sir.
Sir. You don't want to mess with Sam. Yeah. So, and Robert's part is based, you're playing Sam a bit, essentially, and he narrates it. So it's a really, if you're a Robert Carradine fan, you need to see it, and you'll become a Sam Fuller fan too once you watch it.
Very well said.
And you mentioned Yul Brynner. As I had several really great people that influenced me forever. But my first TV series was on CBS. It was a takeoff of The King and I, called Anna and the King, and it was with actually Yul Brynner, the bald guy, who he was bald and famous before Telly Savalas. Anyway, but he was an Academy Award winner and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so I did the TV series. I played his oldest son, and Samantha Egger, who had a great career as well, was in it, Key Luke. And so he was a big influence. We lasted only half a season. We were back-to-back, had the same producers as MASH. So we were neighboring sound stages, same producers. So they're walking back and forth to our show and MASH. Ours was the most expensive show in the history of television at the time, and Yul Brynner was being paid the most money anybody ever made at the time. And so we were on Sunday nights on CBS at 7 o'clock, and MASH was on Sunday nights at 7:30 at CBS. Well, we didn't get the kind of ratings that would allow a network to keep paying the kind of money they did for our show, so they canceled us, and MASH, they moved to Tuesdays, and the rest is history for MASH. But Yul Brynner, till the day he died, and I were very close. I would go travel and visit whenever he would do The King and I, like in New York or even here, just different places. And whenever he was in town, I'd come visit him till he died. He was a great guy.
And you were also Ricardo Montalban. You were also close with him, correct?
Yeah, actually, I did The King and I with Ricardo Montalban, who actually ended up like a stepdad to me. what happened was I played the same role and at the Alley Music Center, and he played the king. But when you do a play, you get really close to people, as Curtis knows, the big play guy. And what happened was we did the show, and we went on tour, and so he took it upon himself to watch. I have twin sisters that were in the role as well, in the show as well. So he took care of my sisters, myself, and my mom, and we went on tour. But it's kind of an interesting thing. And I would visit him when he was doing Fantasy Island. I'd come to lunch and visit him all the time. I mean, yeah, we were friends until he passed as well.
Just a little aside.
Yeah.
My younger brother, Mike Bowen, who's also an actor, he refers to him as Ricardo Mental Block.
If you look though, in the dictionary under the term gentleman, his picture should be there. He was a lovely guy.
Curtis, would you say that your first film, Risky Business, were you spoiled on that? Was it something? Did you realize what that would be, and the artistry behind it?
Again, it gets into that. Do you have any idea what it was going to be? No. Most people, I think, who say they knew that are just rewriting history. But Tom Cruise was 19. I think he had his 19th birthday there. He was not a big star. And I was 29, so I was, 10 years older than him, and I felt like I'd had more experience as an actor than he had. So it was not like I was in awe of him or anything.
The casting agent or Brickman himself, they saw your stage work. They knew, or
no, it was an audition.
Just an audition.
It was just auditioning for months and months and months because they kept trying to cast the two leads, Tom and Rebecca, as it wound up. But they went through all of these other people, and every time they got a new set of leads, we would have to come in months later and audition again for some reason. And so that went on. And they were impressed that every time I would audition, it was exactly the same performance. And that was because I was used to working in the theater. So unless someone tells me to change the performance, I just do the performance over and over and over and over. But they had not seen that before, so that was why I got that part.
I love the fact that's now in the Criterion collection. They just recently put it in the Criterion. Did you know that? Or you knew that?
No.
Oh, the Risky Business is now a Criterion.
Oh yeah, I knew that.
Yeah. That's just pretty prestigious.
No question.
I'm waiting for the
I had not. Risky Business was just in my mind, Risky Business was a fluke. I had gotten it because I auditioned for it, but I was a stage actor. That was what I was always going to do. And I never thought I would do another movie.
Wow.
And that is why with Risky Business, I kept a journal every day for all of the 8 or 10 weeks, whatever it was that we were on that in Chicago. Every day I kept a journal because I wanted to remember what it would be like to make a movie.
So now we're waiting for Revenge of the Nerds to be a Criterion at some point.
Yeah, right.
Yes. Don't hold your breath.
No, we're waiting for Revenge of the Nerds 5. That's not. So, real quick, Brian, one thing that people might not know about you is that you had a daytime talk show for like 4 years, didn't you?
Yeah, 5 years. Yeah.
Okay.
It was my own show on CBS.
What was that like?
It was cool. It was Barry Bostwick used to have the show, and he wanted to be a legitimate actor, so he's not going to do a show like I would take. And so they gave I one of my other TV series. They did a behind the scenes of this thing called Space Academy that I did, and so I took the cameras in and just showed them all behind the scenes and everything else. Well, they remembered that, and so when Barry opted to leave. They said, would you be interested in having your own TV show? And it's by the same producers who created a guy named Don Hewitt. He created 60 Minutes. So I had my own show
called
60 Minutes. So it's called Razzmatazz. I know it didn't sound like 60 Minutes, razzmatazz. But that was the show. But yeah, it was really kind of cool because basically my job was I lived in New York, but I lived in LA, but I worked in New York, so I was on a plane back and forth all the time. But my job was to just travel around the country, take cameras, and do kind of fun, interesting things. And it was kind of a cool deal. Yeah, so I had my own show for a while.
And so, Curtis, two things that I'd like you to talk about. Your book. What was it like writing your book? And also, you are a Sherlockian. So explain what that is to people that might not know.
A Sherlockian is somebody who is obsessed with the character of Sherlock Holmes as written by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Not necessarily movies or TV adaptations, but the original, what we call canon of 60 original adventures of Sherlock Holmes. And it is my hobby. It's one of my hobbies. I love those books, and I write articles about Doyle and other authors and that kind of thing.
And also, how about your? I was really very intrigued by your fandom of Nielsen.
Harry Nilsson. Nielsen.
You did write some liner notes for that.
Yeah, that was weird how that happened. Harry, does anyone raise your hand if you've ever heard of Harry Nilsson? Yeah.
Right?
Okay,
Yeah.
There are a few people. That's great. Yeah. So I had always loved Harry Nilsson, and I was trying to put together a documentary of his life. And I wound up going to New York to RCA Records, as it was then called, because I knew they had film footage of him. And they didn't know who I was until I walked in. They just thought I was somebody who'd been sending them emails. And they didn't realize that I was an actor and I was a known person. And so they suddenly got excited. And so we started listening to outtakes from Harry's albums, which had never been released. And I wound up co-producing, and this is after Harry's death, but co-producing and writing the liner notes for all of Harry Nilsson's records that, and picking out the bonus tracks and doing. It was such a nerdy thing to do. and it was really fun. So that was one of those things.
Not to emphasize Curtis's knowledge of Harry Nilsson. Curtis and I were on a radio show hosted by Mr. Stern.
Howard Stern.
And Howard said, "So I understand you're quite the Harry Nilsson expert. I've put together 10 snippets of songs of Harry Nilsson's."
What he did was he had them put together. There were 10 songs, 1 second. 1 second, the opening note, basically, of 10 songs. And Mr. Smarty Pants, Howard Stern, goes, "Let's see if you can identify these songs." And I identified every single song based on one note. And Stern was screaming. He could not believe it.
Yeah, because you got to understand, the snippet was like, bap.
Yeah. Oh, it's there. That was when Bobby and I were producing and presenting the King of the Nerds series that ran for a few years, and we were doing big publicity for that in New York, and that included the interview with Howard. And I'll tell you, I still look back on that as one of my favorite promotional events, because I didn't know. We were going to go in there and we thought he'd talk about spanking or something. And we didn't realize that the guy, is an interviewer. And if you listen to him all the time, I guess you know this. But I knew all of the naughty stuff. So I was sort of nervous about it. He got the best interview out of both of us.
Yeah, he was incredible.
He was just amazing. And
really
it's out
did his
there.
homework.
I mean, you
yeah.
can hear it. But he knocked me out.
That's why I love doing this. I did not know, and these are my friends who I've known for a long time. I had no idea that Howard, you did a Howard Stern interview with, and that you did that. I learned something new today.
So now you have to get on YouTube and go
I'm
see
going
this.
to.
But it's interesting, and I don't know if this is correct or not, but I was doing some research, and I read Howard Stern, does he own the rights to Revenge of the Nerds?
There is something about that, and I don't know if he still does, but at one point he owned the rights to remaking Revenge of the
Okay.
Nerds.
Yeah.
Only to remake it, not to continue it.
No,
Okay.
no, to remake it.
Like do it over again.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't do that.
No. Well, by the way, he has not, and there's probably a reason for that. But
And Curtis, you kind of just alluded just a second to like hobbies and things like that. I know, Robert, you play guitar.
I do.
So what are your guys like hobbies? What do you enjoy doing?
Motorcycling.
Okay. And you've done that your entire life, basically.
Yes.
Okay. And Brian?
Oh, I like going out and having fun with my friends.
see, I was going to say drinking, and then I said, no, I probably shouldn't say that, and then you said drinking.
Yeah. I didn't say drinking.
Well, no, you were no.
But I like going out drinking with these guys.
Well, and actually yesterday, Brian told me it was a really funny, he may not retell it here, but it was a really funny story about gin that we kind of, had a fun conversation over. Man, what else? Do you guys have any projects going on right now? I mean, are you
I
just...
just finished a film called Cowboy Killer.
Okay. Who was that with?
Bobby
He's
Carradine.
the whole film? Okay. I want to see that. I want to see that. No, I didn't know if there was if either of these guys were in it. Doing cameos or.
Not yet. We're not all the way done. So
Oh, okay.
you guys, you might be available.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
So will we see the theater streaming, straight to video? What?
There's no way to know the answer to that. The whole mechanism by which movies get released today is up in the air.
I've got a great example of that. I did a movie end of last year, called The Dead Guy, and big cast, a lot of people in it, and it is still not released. And I found out, I love this about my business. So the woman who wrote and directed it, we'd finished the movie, she'd gone into production, into post-production and all that. Then I don't hear anything at all anymore. And months go by and I forget about it. I mean, I think, well, something's gotta happen. I don't hear anything. So I'm on the subway one night in New York and coming back from a play, so it's kind of late. And there's one guy left on the train aside from me. And he turns out to be one of the first ADs from The Dead Guy. And so we see each other and we go, oh my God, look at him. Hi, how are you? And he said, so you heard about the movie, right? And I said, no, I haven't heard anything about the movie. And he said, ran out of money. He said they were in the middle of post-production, ran out of money. We don't know if it's ever going to be released. And this is a movie that has, I mean, if you look it up, it's got an amazing cast of people in it. And we worked on it for like 2 months. And then they ran out of money. It was an independent film.
That's because you ran 2 months. That's a long shoot.
And this was not one of my questions, but it just pops into my head. Is there anything that you guys would like to do? Any kind of project, any kind of story that you would like to tell in a movie that you would put your own money behind to get?
Oh, no.
You'd have to be crazy to do that.
Yeah, you never put your own money into this profession.
Well, Mel Gibson, I mean,
Mel Gibson.
Well, let's not bring up Mel Gibson, shall we? As an example of how you do things. Good God.
He did make like $685 million.
Good for him. I hope he enjoys it in his anti-Semitic hell.
And so we actually did really well covering. But for everybody, what would your advice be today for upcoming actors?
Learn how to be a waiter.
I think it's pretty much standard and simple, is that learn your craft, know what you're doing. I mean, it's really funny. Bobby says, earlier today, he said, well, you guys are doing it for real. Revenge of the Nerds could have been one of those stupid, wacky, out there, dumb comedies.
Over the top.
Over the top, because the characters could have been played so over the top that it would not be believable and only played for just the comedy. Well, everybody, all of us, we played it for real. And each one of the characters are pretty antithetic to who we are. As hello, antithetic to who we actually really are. So that was acting. So if you're going to tell somebody, know their stuff, study.
My father would have told him get a literary education. That's what he told us. Yeah, none of us did, but.
But Brian, your career though, I mean, we hear so many horror stories about child actors, and you started so young. What's kept you steady and your head on your shoulders and just having just a great, healthy career? I've
been so lucky. I've worked, as you say, since a child. I've had just great experiences, and I loved working. I loved acting. For example, when I was a kid, Robert Carradine, one of the cool things, I got to work with Bobby Carradine because I knew his brother David before I knew Bobby. David was doing Kung Fu, and the first episode that he ever directed was an episode I guest starred in because he wasn't very much in it. He chose that one to be the director of it. So I got to know his brother well, and socially, every time I'd run into him, it was always great until I got a chance to work with Bobby, and I go, oh man, this is like, it was such a joy for me to be able to work with this guy because I had such a great experience with David and with all these other people that I've worked with as a kid. So I'm just lucky, and I had nice parents who, kept me in my place.
Okay, great.
Yeah, you can take my mic. Okay, if you want. Did you have anything on that as far as advice or?
No, I think his advice is very good.
There's a question. I'm sure there's some questions.
That reminded me of karate.
Yeah, right? I got a jock. Do you have a jock on you?
This will probably be a pretty quick question, but you mentioned great actors earlier. I just wondered, James Cromwell, who was probably shot out in a day, I didn't know if he took most of his cues on how he played his part from you or how that kind of worked out.
Well, the funny thing about James Cromwell is he's the one that invented the laugh. I saw in the script that Lewis, the character Lewis, had this honking donkey bray of a laugh, and I hadn't really put any thought into how I was going to do that. I thought it'll just come to me. Well, it didn't. And the day before we were supposed to start shooting, I went to the director and I said, I don't know what to do about the laugh. He said, here, watch this. And he put the audition tape in a VCR, and there was Jamie doing the laugh. And I was like, oh my God. And we were having like a kickoff party. I went over to Jamie. I said, man, your laugh is really damaged. And, but you're going to, he says, that's not my laugh. I go, it's not? He says, no, that's a technique I came up with. I said, oh, can you show me? And he showed me how to do the laugh. And the next day we were in the station wagon, profile to profile, doing the honking laugh.
It's still one of my favorite moments in the movie. It's like two rare birds honking at each other. I love that.
You got a question back here?
Robert, I know that you worked with John Carpenter on Escape from LA, and John Carpenter is somebody who directs, writes, composes, and he controls so much of a film. As an actor, is it easier to work for somebody that controls so much, or is there more pressure?
No, it's easier because there's no ambiguity. He has specific ideas about what he wants, and in Escape from LA, I wanted to be in the movie, but the only part left was a skinhead. And he said, are you willing to shave your head? And I said, for 2 days' work? I don't think so. He goes, well, that's what it's going to take. I said, well, what if I can get a skull cap and convince you that I've shaved my head? And he said, okay, if you can pull that off, you're in. So I went to the set, and the Westmore family of makeup artists went to work on me, and you can't tell it was a skull cap. I mean, these guys are really good, and that's how I got in that movie.
Wally Westmore.
Got a question here. Mr. Armstrong, was curious what the chemistry with the cast on the set of One Crazy Summer was with Bobcat Goldthwait.
Oh, it was. We actually just did a screening of One Crazy Summer in Connecticut, University in Connecticut, and I mean, it was wonderful. I mean, you're spending the whole summer on Cape Cod, and you're working with Savage Steve Holland, who was another one of those people like Jeff, who just opened up everything to experiment, and you had people like Bobcat, who sort of took over the movie, and that was one weird thing about it. It was very enjoyable. It was very enjoyable, a lot of fun. But one of the funny things about it was that they started noticing Bobcat was so huge. I mean, nobody knew who he was at the time, but he was taking over in a way because he was just such a big character that the rest of it wasn't me so much, but John Cusack, Demi Moore, Joel Murray were all starting to talk like him on film. I mean, it was like they would have a scene with him, and they would be going, "Oh, I don't know," and that would be him, and then they would sort of start talking like that. And Savage was going, "Am I insane?" Everyone was talking like Bobcat, and he had to, every once in a while, he had to say to me, "Stop talking like Bobcat." So, but it was great fun. I loved that movie.
I just want to say, Bobcat is. I did the Police Academy, but I was in the Police Academy movies. Yeah, and actually, Bobcat is also the antithesis of his character.
Yeah, that's
he
for
is
sure.
a quiet, sweet, great guy who just could not stop drinking those tabs, right?
Tabs.
That's
Right.
all he-
Yeah, he drank tabs.
6-pack of tab with him wherever he went. But he's a really regular, nice, sweet guy.
Anybody else have questions? We'll go back to this guy.
Brian, you have a lot of uncredited roles, and I'm always curious what that means. Is that just you're a fan of Starship Troopers and you just want to be on the set and you're like, I don't even want to get paid, I just want to be here?
Yeah.
Is that how that works?
Yeah, sometimes. Yeah.
I didn't know. I always would have figured it's either that or it's you're throwing your talent out there and seeing what sticks.
Well, I've
and what
done
you
a
get
lot of
called back.
stuff that I'm not credited with, and it's just kind of fun. Like I'll be on a set, or back in the day, I was always like visiting people or on a set or whatever. Hey, would Brian do this or would you do that? And I would, and so that's fun stuff.
You know what's a funny thing about that? I just found out this. When they started running Moonlighting again, it's streaming on Hulu. And, I didn't watch it really at the time that we were doing it, but it was a big deal that it was coming back and it had been remastered and it was all exciting. So I decided I would watch my first episode, which I never do. And so I'm watching that episode. I'm uncredited.
You're kidding me?
No, it was my first episode on a television series. I'd never done television before. And it's this big hit series with these big stars. And it's my first episode. My name never appears. And I'm going,
It happens a lot.
What?
Is that just the first episode, though?
Just the first episode. No, after that, they gave me credit. It was like the first time they weren't willing to really commit to it. So they just didn't give my name. Yeah, I mean, but, the face is still there.
Okay, so thanks. Oh, wait, we have a question.
Recently, I saw that Bratz documentary on Hulu, where McCarthy went around and interviewed all those people. I was wondering, I can't remember if there's the Brat Pack. Documentary?
Yeah.
I was wondering, has there ever been? I can't even remember if there's been a Revenge of the Nerds type documentary like that, or if there's anything. You want to know if there's been a making of a
Yeah.
history?
If there's ever been anything like that, like if someone was to go and like interview everybody and just talk about the impact on pop culture, because I mean, I don't think it took 20 something years after the last Nerds movie, but I don't think you'd have something like Big Bang Theory without Revenge of the Nerds and how it.
Oh, absolutely. We should have gotten a piece of the Big Bang Theory.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just wonder if there's ever been like any like talks or any ideas to do like a documentary on its effect on pop culture.
I have not heard of anything along those lines, but
Nope.
that doesn't mean you won't hear of that.
Yeah, I'm not aware of one either, but I loved the Bratz documentary.
The closest thing
Andrew
we
did.
came was when we were shooting the movie, Bobby had a film camera that he'd borrowed, and he was going around doing behind the scenes footage the whole time we were making the movie. And we wound up, after it was done, we made a couple copies. I think
You have one, right?
I have one,
And I have
and
one.
you have one.
Right.
And it's weird stuff like Tony and Bobby in the honey wagon being interviewing each other off the top of their heads.
I think we
All
should
of this.
release this.
Well, we talked about it. We talked about it, and in fact, within our group, we have a name for it, which is Burden of Nerds, and we're the thing is we need to get it all.
That's a great idea. Great.
That's your
question.
Thank you. Okay, so
That
I
might
mean, it would
turn into
certainly work
something.
for part
if you
of it.
give your name to Brian, we'll credit you.
Okay, there you go.
Or not, as the case may be.
That's your next product, because they do have that thing now. It's like they do a negative part of it, and they've been doing wrestling and like the 80s and the 90s and things, but they've also had the positive, impactful. And I can't remember what channel that's on, but it's like the best of the 80s, and they would do Dallas and all
Right,
this other stuff.
yeah.
But that could be the next thing for you.
I'm telling you what,
It would do business.
Yes. Everybody, let's give a big applause.
Hey, thank